So, shout out to everybody. Give me some hand claps or something. There you go. It's a lot better, lot better. Yeah. So, I'm definitely going to work on better music. Shout out to everybody on Facebook and on YouTube, everybody that's tapped in right now. I'm gonna try not to make this long, However, I have been discussing in my group chat. If you are a media personality on a platform and you want to network, you can lock in with us. All you got to do is go to baltimoremedia.co and you can tap in with our organization. And that we do classes. And behind our in our group and behind our paywall, we have classes to educate individuals whom are trying to build a platform or trying to improve their platform. So sign up right now. I mean, we've got membership levels as low as $10, and it goes up to as much as personal mentorship and personal classes up to $100. Get more information at baltimoremedia.co. Let me move on. So we are here today to talk about one of the most iconic, one of the most important, one of the most groundbreaking, and one of the most controversial platforms of the last 15 years. You know what I mean? Let me turn this off because these guys, my phone is going to make all type of noise while this podcast is going on. So let me turn it off. So let me tell you, just like this, the reason why these guys that I'm about to throw on the screen are the ones that changed the game is because they all, on an individual level, have an insane need to improve themselves. Now, all of them having their own individual trials and tribulations, each one of them coming from very difficult upbringings, and busted their butts to become, the people that they became. I think is a huge part of why, we love them, the way we support them, seeing what they individually accomplish and collectively accomplish. It's so super duper important. So just in case y'all might have forgotten who I was talking about, I mean, it's a small microcosm of greatness that has come out of the Breakfast Club. The reason why I'm talking about this today is because this podcast, Explained the Podcast, is here to break down the intricacies of what a platform is, of what a media platform is, or of what a business is or a product. The Explained the Podcast is here to give people a deeper understanding of things they watch. If you are a media person, or if you want to be a part of media, or you want to develop your own platform, it is so essential for you to develop the eyes and the ears for you to be able to dissect what a platform is. So before I get into all of the accoutrement and details, let's jump into a little bit of the history, because it's so important. You can't break down a platform without knowing what the history of that platform is. So, let's jump into that real quick. All right. The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club is an American syndicated radio show based in New York. It is hosted by DJ Envy, whom was the creator of the show. He was actually courted by iHeartRadio back in what year where they created? Oh, I'll give it to you in 2010, December 2010. Probably a little bit before that, because normally, with big New York radio, they have a courtship process where there's a contract negotiation. DJ Envy used to be a huge part of Hot 97 radio. He was not only one of their DJs, but he was also a personality. I think as the changing of guards came, a lot of things was happening. And he was unceremoniously removed from Hot 97, and he was pretty freaking hot. You know what I mean? I think he wanted his own show and wanted some other stuff, and they weren't really capitulating to what he wanted to do. So he actually was courted by iHeartMedia to develop a morning show that could compete with Hot 97's morning show and also compete with what Hot 97 had going on. If you guys don't know, Hot 97 is the biggest radio station I was not necessarily the biggest radio station. It is the biggest hip hop station in New York. It is the most powerful hip hop station in New York. I found these results. Okay, Google, stop. All right. And Google's going to be involved in the whole podcast. So anyway, Hot 97 was definitely a powerhouse at the time. DJ Envy wanted to, stake his claim. He wanted to, of course, establish himself to be more of a forefront name. He was more of a behind the scenes person. I mean, he was always a huge name when it came down to music. He was a part of DJ Clue's Desert Storm crew. He had released an album under Desert Storm. He was obviously DJing worldwide. He did clubs all of the time. He produced. He was definitely a name in the entertainment industry, but he wasn't a DJ Khaled. Like he wasn't even Funk Master Flex. And when you're talking about Hot 97, Funk Master Flex is the biggest name as far as, being around for 30 some years, So in 2010, he was courted by iHeartMedia. They were like, man, let's do a morning show. They came up with the title Breakfast Club. And then they asked him, who would you like to work with? Now, from the DJ Envy story, he courted Angela Yee and Charlemagne the God. For those who are not familiar, Charlemagne the God at the time was not, and I do mean was not, the big name. He was not somebody that people were excited about, or even Charlemagne was not a person that people even wanted to work with, if you really want to be honest about it. Mainly because he had a beef. Well, what is the best way to describe Charlemagne in a way? Because in that time period, Charlemagne had developed a name for being just a renegade. You know what I mean? He started radio in North Carolina. He ended up moving to New York. He was on to what's her name show? I forgot her name, and I'm horrible for that because I'm doing a podcast about the history. But he got onto another show, and he was kind of like a component. He built a name for himself. Then, he got his own show. He got fired. He went to Philadelphia. He did an interview with Benny Siegel while Benny Siegel was beefing with Jay-Z. He got fired from that job. And then he was independent. And once he went independent, he started creating content, because Charlemagne is a smart person. Like, he understands if you want to stay in this game, if you want to be prominent in this game, you have to be making content on a regular basis. So, one of the things he created before he was with the Breakfast Club is this quirky kind of
Duval, Charlemagne the God,
called this obviously, as you can hear,
the
video. The only reason why the video was bad is because this was something that was taken from somebody else's YouTube channel and posted up. State of the Union was something created by Charlemagne the God and Little Duval. This was back in 2010, 2011. And he was like, before he came to be a part of the Breakfast Club, this was like his way of staying relevant, talking about content.
People brushing his
and it was the perfect balance. Charlemagne could do all of his hot takes. Lil Duval kept it funny. Lil Duval had at that time his name was a little bigger, mind you, because he was a touring stand-up comedian. So his name was a little bit more righteous, and Lil Duval had a little bit more money. But Charlemagne had relationships. He had connections. He was solidly in the media. So, DJ Envy courts Charlemagne, pulls him off of what he's doing. He approaches Angela Yee. Angela Yee actually is doing content for Sirius XM radio, and she's doing her own interviews. In 2010, I don't know if y'all remember, she did an interview with back when this is the fat. This is I call him the fat Gucci man, like the old Gucci man that was big on drugs and quite a wild character. Angela Yee was doing interviews on her own. She was conducting her own interviews, flying around the country. She was working for Sirius XM. She was doing a lot of hostings, things of that nature. So while she was doing that, she got courted by DJ Envy, and then the Breakfast Club is born. But I'll give you more of the Wikipedia. All right. The Breakfast Club, let's see, hosted by DJ Angela Yee, DJ Envy, and Charlamagne the God. The Breakfast Club flagship station is WWPR-FM Power 105.1, and it currently airs in over 90 radio markets around the U.S., including Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Miami. And New York, obviously. Common topics of discussion of the show are celebrity gossip, progressive politics, sex, and dating issues. The program it broadcasts live on weekdays from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time with a recorded Saturday morning version. Really? I didn't know they had a recorded Saturday morning version. In December 2010, The Breakfast Club was established on urban contemporary station WWPR-FM as a morning drive radio show serving the New York City market. In April 2013, Premier Networks, a subsidiary of Clear Channel Communications, now iHeartMedia, launched a weekend version of the show, Weekends with The Breakfast Club, as a top 20 countdown of urban contemporary hits. For 4 months later, The Breakfast Club was a weekday offering, was rolled out into syndication. Based on the show's popularity, cameras were installed in the New York studio from where the show is broadcast in March 2014. The Breakfast Club began to simulcast on Revolt Television Network. This is a huge thing, and we'll get into it later. In January 2020, The Breakfast Club was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in the category of Outstanding News Information Series or Special. In July 2020, The Breakfast Club was nominated for induction into the Radio Hall of Fame. Talk radio industry magazine Talkers included it in its 2020 Heavy 100 list of top 100 influential talk radio shows, calling the show appointed listening every day for people of color. During the aftermath of the George Floyd protests, the Los Angeles Times called it a radio forum for the nation's racial reckoning. As of July 2020, the show reached 8 million listeners a month, according to Nielsen. In August 2020, The Breakfast Club was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. November 2021, the show stopped its simulcast on Revolt. The contract ended and they did not renew. So, back into some education things. That was a little bit of the history. DJ Envy, popular DJ Angela Yee, is working on Sirius XM, doing her own stuff independently, hosting, doing interviews, etc., etc. Charlamagne the God, being a wild boy, kicking up a lot of dust. So even bringing them together was a controversial move. The show started off, and these are stories that are recounted by DJ Envy. He said that, hey, man, the first year wasn't really going that good. The second year didn't do much better. We were actually about to get canceled until Ray J calls in and starts wilding about a situation that happened between Ray J and Fabulous. That goes viral. They take an audio clip of that quick interview and they put it online. There's no video. The show explodes. They go viral pretty much for the first time. I think after that, people really started paying attention to the show. So it gets us into the next topic. What's their blueprint? Their blueprint for success. So let me take it to the notes, man. I want to say, because it's the easiest transition, relationships are so important. When you're trying to build a platform, especially a morning show on Hot 97, having relationships that you can reach out to become particularly important. The Breakfast Club had relationships. DJ Envy had tons of industry relationships. Angela Yee had tons of industry relationships. Charlamagne, not so much. Him and Charlamagne at the time was a burn bag, causing so many issues between power players in the industry. I firmly do believe that he was kind of blacklisted. But more importantly than him being blacklisted, he was in a crazy mind state. Self-admittedly, he was cheating on his wife. He was, doing all types of drinking, moving around. Like, he wasn't as business-minded and as focused as he is today. However, he does have a special knack for ruffling an interview's feathers and getting to information and getting information out of people that they didn't want to get out. He has an unorthodox approach to interviews. At the time, this is not something that's common. It's not as common in Black urban radio. Let's say it like that. If you want to talk about radio from Howard Stern, if you want to talk about Don Imus, if you want to talk about Petey Green, these were controversial voices that were very well known in New York and in DC, and that conducted interviews. But Petey Green was old school. That was like 70s and 80s. When you're talking about Howard Stern and Don Imus, you're talking about the 80s, 90s, and then Howard Stern still exists today on Sirius XM. You've got to subscribe to pay for his insanity. So radio had been long away from having controversial voices on air. And then controversial Black voices, totally uncommon. And there's a difference between being controversial and being gossip heavy, gossip driven. Charlemagne was, yes, interested in mixing up into the gossip bag and into, all of the dumb stuff, but he really kind of got deep in a lot of those interviews, even back before he found his calling, before he really knew where he wanted to go. He really had a knack for getting deep into discussions and talking about things that a lot of people avoided talking about. Angela Yee is more of a traditional interview. She doesn't push too hard. She does ask controversial questions, but she does it in a softer way. She does have a mom's touch when it comes down to conducting interviews and having conversations. DJ Envy is old school. He's more of a, hey, bro, how you doing? Welcome to the show. What are you here to promote? Let's have a good time. Let's have fun with the interview. He's less controversial. However, when you put the three of them in the room together, and then you jump into that chair as an interviewee, let me see because I thought I had a picture of the studio, and we're going to get into that. But when you go into the Breakfast Club and you sit down, you are pretty much sitting between three people. And if you've ever been in a social setting, let's talk about that. Right. So let's talk about if you were. All right. So let's kind of move forward a little bit. I want to see some. There you go. All right. Notice how your guest is sitting between two people. Behind him is a wall. Behind him is a wall. To his right is an interviewer. To his left is an interviewer. In front of him is an interviewer. You are surrounded. And they have pacing. Another wonderful thing about the Breakfast Club is pacing. They don't waste time. They don't let things linger. Like, they'll ask you a question. Charlemagne will ask you a question. You'll be kind of like, what's going on? And he'll say something a little wild. He's developed this knack for. Charlemagne knows how to disarm you. How are you doing, brother? How are you feeling? What's going on? Before it was, man, let's have a drink. Hey, bro, what's up? So you kind of focusing on him. Angela's going to hit you with the, so I saw you with Shorty over here. So now you turning back. And then Charlemagne's hitting you. So think about the physical disorientation that comes with having to turn left because somebody's hitting you, and then you turning right. And then which caller is in front of you asking you questions is disorientating. You don't have the ability there's nowhere to hide. Like, even if you were to try to sit back and cross your arms, you're still catching it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's normally some people can either move further into a corner. Like, think about the physicality of it. Being interviewed from all sides, it can be, first of all, interviews are draining anyway, because people are asking you personal questions, especially on a high level. If you're somebody that is very important, questions are going to get, you're going to get hit with questions, and it's going to be something that you may not be prepared for. So you end up being in a space where you're trying to find your comfort zone, or you're trying to find your space, and you can't find it. So the Breakfast Club gives you none of that. You don't get shelter. Even though you don't have to answer the questions, a lot of people came on the Breakfast Club early days, not knowing that, you need to be trained. These are seasoned professionals. Charlamagne, Angela Yee, DJ Envy are seasoned professionals, meaning that they've been doing this 10 years, 15 years before we even got to the Breakfast Club. So these people know how to frame a question, reframe a question. I'm going to lay back. You're going to tell me no. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'll rephrase the question. I'll represent it. They're going to do their research. Anybody that knows Charlamagne, if you've watched the show as much as I've watched it, he comes with notes, sometimes 2 and 3 pages of questions. Because the night before, he's going to get in there and start figuring stuff out. They prepare. The blueprint of this show is simple. Surround the guest. Number 2, obviously, wild preparation. Number 3, the cameras are hot. Just like I showed you before. And this is so important, especially to my creators. Keep the camera rolling from the time the person comes in the door. You keep that camera rolling. So super important. So let's go back. Let's go back to this. This interview hadn't started. Hold on, wrong one. This interview hadn't started. Birdman walks in the room with his security. The camera's on, baby. The cameras are hot. The mics are hot. They're recording. So this is a 2.5 minute clip, maybe a 3-minute clip. A minute of that is just him walking in the room, cursing them out before essentially the show was supposed to start. This show, it gives away all the secrets. You don't know what's going to happen. You need to be prepared. They are always prepared. Mike's hot. This is business. When you walk into that building, when you walk into those rooms, understand it's business, and they are in the business of creating content. The Breakfast Club was revolutionized by the fact that they had cameras in the studio and they posted long form clips. Before the Breakfast Club, Howard Stern conducted interviews on camera. Larry King conducted interviews on camera. There are many other artists that conducted interviews live on camera. Larry King was on network television. So if you weren't tapped in live when his joint happened, you didn't see it. And on the internet, they posted clips, 1-minute clip, 2-minute clip. Larry King left network television, and I think he invented Orca, which was his own television network. And then he once again started working his butt off. And most of the time they posted clips. Guess what? Once the Breakfast Club came in and the Breakfast Club started doing long form interviews, meaning they didn't post clips of the interviews. They posted the entire interview. That changed the game. They changed the game. They took the podcast, they took the podcast format and integrated it into the radio format. I'll say that again, because I don't want you guys to let this stuff blow by your brain. They took the podcast framework and applied it to live radio. Took the interviews, because if you listen to the Breakfast Club on the radio, they have to take radio breaks. So the conversation is long form, then they chop it up and they take usable pieces and they put it on live radio. They took the long form interview with the video and the audio, put it all together, and they placed it on YouTube. People got to, for the first time in history, get to see what a daytime radio show interview is actually like in real time, real life, no editing, with the cursing in, with a person making mistakes, saying the wrong things, divulging things that they weren't prepared for. That's another element of the Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club posted everything. They gave you raw interviews and you're at a high level. iHeartMedia isn't a small company. It is a huge mega conglomerate. So, and this was a very heavily invested show. Well, from what they said in the beginning, the Breakfast Club was not heavily invested. But once they started posting their videos on YouTube and those videos started going viral, once again, because I think people are going to let this go over their heads. YouTube now prioritizes long form content. YouTube did not prioritize long form content 10 to 12 years ago. YouTube was focused on short content, 5-minute clips, 10-minute clips, 15-minute. Long form was demonetized, not demonetized, but it was deprioritized, meaning that you would post something that's an hour long, they weren't pumped about it. They weren't going to turn the algorithm on into your, to you. They would show, whatever your thing was, suggestion, cool, it is, whatever. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But we as fans got to see a lot of our favorite artists and celebrities on camera in a raw format, which was uncommon. I'm not going to say it never happened. You still had Oprah or whatever, but they did not make it a priority to post their content on YouTube. The Breakfast Club made it a priority to post those clips on YouTube before YouTube became the platform that it is. I dare to say Breakfast Club is one of those platforms that made YouTube the powerhouse that it is. It became the go-to place for content that you want. So, putting the camera on the interview, blueprint, posting content immediately after. Don't let that go over your head. Taking the content, shooting it. The guest came in at 6, 7 in the morning. How many interviews have you watched on Breakfast Club? And the person is complaining, man, y'all got me up hella early in the morning. Y'all got me down here shooting stuff. Why? Because those guys are in there early. Why? Because we need to record your interview now. We need to chop up the audio, and I need to play it for the 9 a.m. traffic jam when people are stuck on the highway and they're fighting their way into the city between 8 and 10. Those are the times you're going to play those interviews, and you're also going to do your music mixes, whatever. But you want to get those people in early. You do those interviews, and then you get that stuff out of there. When you see that video, a lot of that stuff was happening that morning. They shot all of the content first thing in the morning. They did a rough edit. Sometimes they only had one camera. They got that content up on YouTube. No clips. If you really look, because I was actually looking today in the last week, I was like, man, I want to get some clips from some of the interviews. They do not post clips. No 1-minute clip or 3-minute clips, not even on their Instagram. I mean, they have little clips and stuff here and there, meaning that like every now and then, but it's not common for them for them to start promoting small clips of the interview. It's normally the entire interview. If you go to their YouTube channel, the clips that they have are of like breaking news or different segments. So it'll be like their gossip segment or, this segment, that segment. They'll do clips of that. But the interviews, they keep in long form. No subject is off limits. Their show has variety. Let me pull up something for you guys. Let's see. When I say variety, we're talking about guests of all types. We're talking about guests from all walks of life, all levels of importance, from Kanye West to DMX, Larry King, Pusha T, John Witherspoon, Childish Gambino, DJ Khaled, Lupe Fiasco, the Combat Jack from the Combat Jack Show. He wasn't a pop culture icon. Combat Jack was a pioneer in the podcast business and had made his name doing interviews, long-form interviews of a lot of the historically great hip-hop legends. But the thing that made Breakfast Club wonderful is that they found gems like Combat Jack and they put him on the radio. They put him out there. Prodigy when he was alive, Charlie Murphy when he was alive, Kendrick Lamar, 2 interviews, Diddy, multiple interviews, Q from World Star. There are not many places where you can go and see an interview with the owner and creator of World Star before he passed away. The Breakfast Club was one of those places. The list goes on and on, from Jay-Z to Nia Long let's be honest. What platforms did we have? Let me show y'all. What platforms did we have for our greats to come whenever they felt like it to promote whatever they had, whether it was a part of the big government, let me not say big government system, whether it was a part of the major entertainment system or not. So if Nia Long was doing an independent film, where was she going to go to do an interview that had access to the world? Because NBC, ABC, these places weren't allowing. You didn't have time in your schedule to bring in a regular interview. Think about that. You have ratings. If Nia Long's not an A-list celebrity, it's not helping me to bring her on. She's right now a C-list. And this is, I'm not, no disrespect to her. Let's just talk about the reality. Breakfast Club had so much time on their hands that they needed to bring in B, C, and D listers. But that ended up playing to their advantage because they ended up becoming the go-to place for individuals that had dope things going on. People like Dr. Umar Johnson and, you know, all of these people that are a part of the Black cultural lexicon today were brought in and established by the Breakfast Club. Then you have those classic huge moments with people like the Minister Louis Farrakhan, who was not allowed, and I'm using these words very carefully, not allowed to be in front of major platforms. He was not allowed in those buildings. He was not allowed to have those conversations. For whatever reason, don't know. And I am not here to get into that. But the first time I've seen in my modern time, I am 43 years old. The first time I saw Minister Louis Farrakhan in a modern day platform, you know, was on the Breakfast Club. Did a 2-hour interview and I was glued to the TV. Like, this man is hugely articulate, beautiful, you know, a wonderful, positive person. Yes, has some controversial things to say, but a great guy. Rush Limbaugh. What Black person even likes Rush Limbaugh? Like, you know what I mean? However, great conversation, controversial conversation, great conversation. Dick Gregory. I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even know who Dick Gregory was. I was on the Breakfast Club. I ended up going down a rabbit hole on this guy. And I suggest anybody, if you're not familiar who Dick Gregory is, and take some time and get to know that guy, man. Like, phenomenal. And rest in peace. And love to him and his family. Dame Dash, one of the most legendary interviews is with Dame Dash on the Breakfast Club. Whew. So much knowledge dispensed. Once again, that was the first time I saw Dame Dash as a human being. Before that, the only time I remember seeing him have conversations were either on like CNN news networks, and he was being more of a character then. It was short form. You didn't really have an opportunity to really have a real conversation. It's more soundbitey. And then before that, you know, Dame Dash had the television show, and then the only time you saw him was in music videos. But to see that gentleman, to see how ingenious Dame Dash is, and giving him the opportunity to have a long-form conversation, and then posting that long-form conversation, you got to understand, these are the things that changed the game. These are the things that impacted me and that impacted the world in such a major way. Then Jay-Z, long-form conversation. Like, let's do y'all research, man. Like, before Breakfast Club came along, hour-long conversations with Black celebrities, hour-long uncommon. Having a platform that cared enough about Black people to allow them to talk so that you can understand how intelligent they are, to not put them in a place where everything is all about trying to get that soundbite. Look at regular radio and regular television. A lot of times people are trying to trap you. All right, well, I brought you on the show because there's a controversy, so I'm gonna let you talk about your kids and all that. Yeah. Then I'm gonna ask you those questions to trying to zero in to the real point. And once I get the clip I need, all right, cool. Let's run to a song, man. We appreciate you coming. All right, let's get you out of the building. All right, we don't care about you. Get out. But Breakfast Club they had their moments. However, they still gave people an opportunity to talk, an opportunity to express themselves, an opportunity to be emotional, an opportunity to be upset, an opportunity to be a human being. And then that catapulted Black voices and Black faces because now they're more humanized. How many of you probably thought Dame Dash was crazy? Because we were all Jay-Z robot crazy people because we thought Jay-Z is the greatest guy in the world. He could never be flawed. Jay-Z is gonna, but then you see Dame Dash, you know, dang, this thing is a genius. Like, you heard the legend of Dame Dash being a genius. But to sit and have a conversation with him. And I don't want to just continue to play him up. Dick Gregory, the same way. Minister Louis Farrakhan, the same way. You know, the Breakfast Club gave you an opportunity to get to know people that you would have never got an opportunity to get to know on your own time. Each person is responsible for a different job. So important. And everybody knows their assignment. Angela Yee knows her assignment. Angela Yee is here to talk about relationships. These two misogynistic dudes who are still growing as men, not gonna, you know what I mean? And I'm the same way. You know, I'm not about to be like asking no grown man about, you know, yo, bro, how's sex with your wife? Or like, what you out here doing with these girls, bro? You out here cheating on your wife, bro? Like, you know, that's not our thing. So they kind of leave it to Angela Yee, and Yee proudly takes the banner. She can address issues of sexuality. She can address issues of softer, more feminine issues. Charlemagne is definitely the person to shake you up. That's his job. His job is to, you know, you come in with your defenses up, he's knocking those defenses down. And he has his own unique way of going about it. His job is to shake you up, you know, get you comfortable or get you uncomfortable, and then allow them to soften it up. Angelique's going to soften you up. You know, Envy's going to soften you up. And then after y'all get coddled by the two of them, then Charlemagne's going to come back and ask you those hard-hitting questions. He's going to get you in there. That's their job. DJ Envy is the industry person. He's the person where most of the industry guys, when they walk in the door, they know him. People know DJ Envy. You got to understand, think about the psychology of that. Yo, I've been knowing DJ Envy 20 years. That's my man. Like, yo, we've been in a club. Look, man, we probably been in some situations that we should never talk about. You my man. I'm coming to the interview. So Envy, yo, you look out for me. So you're coming in sitting with Envy because that's your man. Yeah, he make you comfortable. Yeah. But then Charlemagne hits you. Whoa. Then Angela Yee hitting you. And you know them, but you know Envy a little bit more. He's the bigger star. He's that person where he's the person on the same level of you. That's what everybody's job is. You know, be relatable. Envy is relatable. Angela Yee is, you know, talking about relationships, talking about sex. And then they're all talking business. They're all talking psychology. They're all talking about mental health, you know, which was something ushered in over time by Charlemagne, obviously, as he's crashing and burning in his own life, and he needed to find therapy so that he can improve himself. And this is what a blueprint. Taking the things that you utilize to improve your life and bringing it to your platform. Charlemagne brought his therapy to the Breakfast Club. Charlemagne brought his financial education to the Breakfast Club. He didn't go, well, man, I met these guys and they're great and they're teaching me how to invest money and I'm just going to keep it to myself. Charlemagne said, man, I met these guys, these Earn Your Leisure guys, man, they've been teaching me so much about money. Come on the show. They start presenting information. And then what does Charlemagne do after that? Bro, y'all should have a podcast. Bro, y'all should be doing this video shit. Yo, bro, y'all need to be interviewing people. Like, and if think about it, come on, let's think about this. How many times have you watched an interview and you've heard Charlemagne freely giving up game? Bro, you need a podcast. Bro, you need to do this. Bro, you need to do that. Like, he's freely helping. And then he's saying, yo, I got you, bro. After the show, I'm gonna plug you in. How many times have you heard that? Blueprint. Secret, huge level blueprint. It's always better to have more people on your side than have people against you. Think about how many people Angela Yee, DJ Envy, and Charlemagne have helped behind the scenes. Think about how much more powerful their platform becomes because they empower so many other people. How do you think New York runs with the three of those people helping out and creating so many millionaires? Think about that. I'm going to move on. Interviewers grew with the show. The interviewers grew with the show. The interviews subsequently grew. As Charlemagne realized his misogyny, his inappropriateness, as DJ Envy realized, that, I don't need to be like Charlemagne and I don't need to be at odds with Charlemagne. Once Angela Yee realized that, bro, this isn't just a bromance going on here. Yo, we're all a team. Once they started to grow and they moved past their individual issues and they started to really embrace their journalistic sides to them, they've all grown. If you look at 10 years ago, Charlemagne in the interview, it was all about, wilding. Let's take some shots. Let's, do this. And like, I'm going to ask you some crazy questions. And now he starts every interview. Hey, good morning. How are you feeling? How is your mental health? That's the evolution of the interviewer. When Charlemagne is now more effective in his conversation, he's less conspiratorial. He's less argumentative. He's more careful, cautious, and intentional in his question asking. Yes, he'll still be funny. Yes, he's found how to balance his funny side from his controversial side. He understands that, the controversy is how I get paid, baby. But I can do it in a respectful, loving way. I can be controversial without being disrespectful. I can be controversial without being damaging. The evolution of the interviewer evolves the interview. So now the person that is being interviewed, when they're being asked, how is your mental health? Guess what? Have discussions about mental health. Now you start realizing that these people that have never talked about personal stuff in that fashion start opening up like flowers. Now you're getting this great content. They're talking about their children. They're talking about abuse. They're talking about being ripped off. And now, because Charlemagne is who he is, now the conversation shifts to, not only am I getting this great content because you're telling me stuff that you've never told anybody, but now I'm giving you ways to deal with it. So now I'm getting the gossip and the juicy stuff, but now we're having discussions on how to heal and how to fix. Think about how powerful that is. Evolved conversation. Evolved interviews that are impactful, that you're going to go back and watch again. Why? Because when you start having mental health issues and you're dealing with something and you'll remember that, man, Usher said something or this person said something, let me go back and watch it again. Because somebody's going to need help and somebody's going to take that video and send it to somebody else because it has value beyond just some random, we talked about the album, I'm good, I'm great, best album I ever created, yup, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? That content expires immediately because after that record album cycle is done, nobody cares. After the movie is out and you've seen it and watched it, that interview doesn't have any value anymore. But when you start talking about cryptocurrency from, if it's a celebrity talking about cryptocurrency, or they're talking about mental health, or they're talking about abuse, or they're talking about education, or they're talking about wealth building, talking about building businesses, replay value, replay value, replay value. Blueprint, baby, blueprint. They hold their guests accountable as much as they hold themselves accountable. Ooh. They hold their guests accountable the same way they hold themselves accountable. The 6ix9ine interview, I'm quite sure a lot of you never wanted to watch it, and I never, because he's such a... Got it, bro. Your hip-hop integrity is too high to watch anything that has to do with him. Got it. But for those who did watch it, the 20 million people, because it's got numbers. The first thing they do is they ask Tekashi, yo, do you understand the impact of what you're doing? Do you understand how you're potentially causing harm to yourself? How you're causing harm to the audience that listens to you? Do you understand how you're putting yourself in potential physical danger? That whole interview was about, why do you need to conduct yourself this way? Minister Louis Farrakhan, they talk about the way he speaks to the Jewish community. They offer pushback. It's light and it's respectful, but they have discussions. Every person that comes on the show, they push back, meaning that when issues arise, or if there's something that they feel like is inappropriately happening, they push back. So important. So important. When you're talking about a show that is so impactful, so that has the ability to touch so many people, how important is it that they hold their guests accountable? Think about that. Think about how when people come on the show, because there was a time that was about 2 years in that little 12-year run that Charlamagne was catching hell from every woman that walked in the door. Let's not forget, there were tons of women back when Charlamagne was evolving. He was going through his evolution process, going from being the dirt road don and all of the crazy stuff that he used to say, you know, drinking, smoking, messing around with women on the side and all of that stuff that he was doing. I remember multiple, and when I say multiple, I don't mean two. We're talking about 10, 15 female guests that would come on the show and pull Charlamagne up for what he was doing, how he talked to women, how he responded to female issues, how he weighed in or was inappropriate with what he was doing. And he didn't go, forget y'all, man, I'm gonna do what I want to do, da 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 da. He took heed to what these women were saying, and he actively improved upon how he spoke about women, how he treated his wife, and now becomes an advocate against people doing the same thing, holding himself accountable. When he conducted the interview with Gucci Mane by himself, and then Gucci Mane disrespected Angela Yee, he goes back and he apologized to Angela Yee. Accountability. DJ Envy. When DJ Envy went off, he's gone off on a few different people. And he's had to come back and apologize. And he's talking about being in therapy. He talked about cheating on his wife, talking about growing and evolving. Accountability from the person that's conducting the interview is just as important as having that interviewer hold people accountable. Blueprint, bruh. Blueprint. That's like, oh my God. I can go on and on. I'm trying not to. This is going on way farther than I want. And I'm still on the blueprint of what makes the show great. They know the power of their voices, and I'm very careful and intentional about how they speak. I wish I could go into that. We'll get into it another time. Strategic partnerships. Revolt Television. Loudspeakers Network. And let's get into that real quick. Loudspeakers Network is a network that pretty much bankrolled the podcast of The Brilliant Idiots, which is Charlamagne's individual podcast, bankrolled Angela Yee's Lip Service, and bankrolled DJ Envy's podcast with his wife. And how many millions of views has each one of those podcasts generated over the years? Listeners, downloads, commercials. Where do you think the concept of the Black Effect came from? Think about that. Strategic partnerships. Revolt Television. Repurposing content. That's the new thing right now, right? Repurposing content. Never-ending cross-branding. Do I really need to get into it? Do you not see the background of the studio? Do you not see how? Wait a minute. Hold on. Do you not see how there's tons of? Oh, pause that. Look at that. Cross branding. Let's see. Charlemagne has a book in the background. He's got an iHeartMedia award in the background. He's got a YouTube award in the background. He's got Ciroc bottles in the background. Does that give off anything? Cross branding? All right, we ain't got to do it. You know what I mean? Revolta's on the microphone. I mean, let's not pay attention to that. Let's just move on. Diversity. I hate the fact that the Breakfast Club is referred to as an urban black show. Why? They bring on just as many white celebrities. They've had Arnold Schwarzenegger on, Larry King. They've had tons. Yo, they've had presidential nominees on there, bruh. You had Mrs. Clinton. You had what's his name? The old guy with the white hair. Come on, bro. We've had tons of white guests on the show. Asian guests, Indian guests, Indian celebrities. Shoot, Africans, like straight up African superstars. Come on, bro. But it's still an urban black show because what the hosts are black. Diversity. It's what makes that show great, and it helps bring in a diverse crowd. Guess what? The more diversity you have, who's listening? More people. They keep their disputes in house. The beef between Charlemagne and Angela Yee, the only person that spoke out publicly about that was Angela Yee. And that only lasted for like 1 or 2 interviews, and it wasn't gone into real deep. She said a couple words, she left it at that. All of the issues were handled behind the scenes. DJ Envy and Charlemagne had issues throughout the years. They kept all that stuff behind the scenes. They have very intelligently understand the power of their platform and the power of the media and how the media can mess up business. So we need to be more cognizant of how we present ourselves and how we move. Power. They don't chase trends. Let's not get into that. Let's just move on. You know what that means. Reoccurring popular guests, almost like a secondary cast. Bringing in huge names that have been banned from other networks. That was Ms. Louis Farrakhan, Dick Gregory, Dame Dash. All right. Priority on education, giving people information that is usable, which makes the content more valuable. Major conversations with different people, such as the names I've mentioned before. So, I think I've beaten you guys down with information. Let me move on. That is the blueprint of their success. And there's tons more information we can get into at another time. Let's go. All right, equipment and tech used to create their work. So the Breakfast Club has a nice, huge studio, and they have no lack for resources. Why? Because the Breakfast Club is bankrolled by a major media conglomerate. So let's see, the Breakfast Club radio. And let me pull up a picture of their studio. All right, let's share the screen. Let's bring up. And let me isolate that so you guys can start seeing. Ugh, that went to a whole different page. I'm so sorry. So let me see. Let me stop that. Let me pull up another one and see if I can make it work. All right, there you go. So I'm sorry, you guys. I know people are annoyed by anybody slowing down or taking their time with anything, but collapse the ad. So what we're looking at is a picture of the studio. It's not the biggest space in the world, which is great. And the reason why all right, let me explain. The reason why you in recording studios for radio, the spaces are kind of small. Number one, there's multiple studios in that space. There are probably 5 or 6 studios because they're conducting shows. It's New York City. It's a major market. And a lot of times they're doing shows for multiple places all in one place. So there might be 10 studios in that same joint, and they're all doing different shows. There might be one room that's country, one room that's hip hop, one room that's talk radio, one is sports, one is whatever. So in their studio space, it's a controlled environment. Sound proofing is at its best. It's a state-of-the-art studio. So recording audio can be done in a whip. It can be edited in a whip. It can be put out in a whip. If you look on top of, if you start from Angela Yee, you move left a little bit, look on top of those monitors, you'll see this white cone looking thing. Well, that's a camera that's sitting there. So I think y'all can see my marker. See, that's a camera. That's a camera. There are another camera on the other side, and pretty much that whole room is full of cameras. Now, in the beginning, let me kind of throw myself on the screen. In the beginning, they used to have one cameraman, and that cameraman would shift his attention to the person talking. So if Charlemagne, he would take the camera and put it on Charlemagne, and then the guest talk, he would put it on the guest, and then they would, and then as the popularity of the video clips, of the video interviews started rising, eventually they moved into this more kind of like, we put cameras all over the room, and they are controlled from a mixing board probably outside of the room. So if anybody's aware of kind of like the newer technology, the way stuff is, there's a live stream active mixing, kind of like live television format, where somebody can have 6 cameras, 7 cameras, and you can, while the interview is happening, you're doing kind of like an active mix, meaning that you're switching from one camera to the next live, like a television show, even though it's not going streaming out live, but it's being recorded live. Meaning, so the conversation is happening, and they're switching from one camera to the next, and then it's all being recorded live, and then not streamed live, but recorded all at one time. And then once the interview ends, it's saved with all of the camera angles switched from one to the other, and then it's posted like that. Because if you would have to take footage from 6 cameras and then try to sit down and then edit all of that stuff, it would take way more time. And somebody just did the interview at 6 a.m. and they need it for 9 o'clock. You don't have time. You got to kind of do it all on the run, and you kind of got to post it. So they have premium audio equipment provided by iHeartMedia. They've got premium level video equipment, and that means that they're required to have an audio engineer. So if you look here, I'm going to put this on the big screen again. Let's say you've got your man Envy right here. Well, you've got your audio engineer right here. He's running everything. He's producing the show. He's the producer. So his job is to make sure that, the transitionings are happening, the commercials are being played, everybody's levels are right, making sure that we're going in and out on time, making sure that they're staying on topic, and also maintaining the integrity of the equipment, maintaining the integrity of the audio, etc., etc., etc. And then they're going to have a separate person that's a video producer. So your video producer is pretty much the person whose job or responsibility it is to make sure that all of the video is being captured, it's being stored properly, that, those switch outs from one camera to the next is happening, and that is going online. So you're talking about 2 full-time producers. You're going to have a video editor. You're going to have a booker who's also more like an assistant, meaning that there's a person that their job all day long is to make sure that the interviews are booked, that the schedule is maintained, that if somebody has a problem, they can't come on the show, then they're notified and they fill it up with somebody else. That is a full-time. Booking is a full-time gig. So that's another person. Each one of them has a personal assistant, sometimes 2 or 3. So probably at this point, Charlemagne has a personal assistant for each one of his ventures. So his book venture he's probably got somebody working for his publishing company that works for him full time. He's got somebody, probably 2 or 3 people that work with him for Black Effect. And then he has somebody that handles his personal schedule that's another person. And then for any kind of other stuff that are major, he's going to have, and that's how you end up with an entourage of people, because you've got to have people that are, their whole job is to focus on those things. Like his publishing company is a big deal. He puts out books, like he's got his books, and he's been putting out books from other noteworthy people. So you need somebody to handle that. You got people that's getting the scheduling. Then you've got Black Effect. Come on, bro. You're talking about at least 20 or 30 goddamn platforms at this point on Black Effect. That takes. Then he's got his own content that he's got to create on Black Effect. That's going to take up time. Then you got his personal assistant that handles his life schedule, his wife going out on anniversary, the kids' birthdays, the soccer team, the da-da-da-da-da. So he's got to maintain all of those things, and a lot of time that staff is there. Same thing with Envy, same thing with Angela Yee. They're all diversified and invested in a lot of different things, and you need people around to keep the ball in the air. Whew. Sounds tiring, doesn't it? All right, let's move on to the next element of the show. Let's talk numbers and demographics and financials. Normally, I would have like a long rundown of stuff, but I am at an hour and 5 minutes. So I'm going to do a part 2 to this show, and we're going to get into the numbers, and we're going to get into the financials and a breakdown of it. Then we're going to have some real big fun with it. But I want to say thank you, everybody, for tapping in and plugging in with me. I thought this was only going to be like maybe 20 or 30 minutes. But it's just so much to talk about with this beautiful platform and these beautiful people that, there's so much to learn. And I want everybody to really engage themselves and really start picking apart their favorite platforms and figuring out, how do you feel like these things function? If you agree with some of the stuff that I've said or all of the stuff, drop a comment. If you don't agree and you feel like I'm a failure when it comes down to this, I completely understand. Drop a comment, let me know. I am definitely an active responder, so never know. What's missing from these platforms? Man, that's a big question that I've asked myself. But I will definitely tell you what I feel like. There's a couple of things that are definitely missing, and I want to make this short, sweet, and to the point. The Breakfast Club is definitely missing a conference. I feel like, being the leaders that they are, I feel like they should be focusing way more on educating new up-and-coming media personalities. That's one thing. Second thing is something that they've actually talked about addressing, is that they want to bring new faces. They've been on the air for 12 years now. Now, a lot of times you got to understand there's some, white contemporaries in their field that have probably been in there 30, 40 years doing the same thing. But I understand exactly what they were saying. They're saying, hey, bro, we're getting old. We're all diversified in a lot of different stuff. We want this platform to stay fresh. We want it to stay active. And we want to bring in voices for the new generation. So they want to start stepping aside and allowing some younger voices to come in and take over, to have conversations that they're not able to have because they're old heads. I respect that. That's definitely something that's missing. Number 3, I feel like you're a radio station, a radio show. I really feel like, there should be more emphasis on lifting and uplifting artists of different calibers. Not just having a conversation, but finding out ways where we can catapult new artists and new content. I'm not holding it against them. They still do a great job. This is just one I feel like it's missing. What's the future for this creation? With what I say is missing, I definitely feel like them diversifying and bringing in new voices is definitely a future. I definitely feel like them continuing to conduct interviews. I think that's important. Getting more politically active, I think that's an important element. I even saw Breakfast Club, in a vision of mine. Like, man, I could see Breakfast Club breaking out as its own network, really, with a lot of different voices if they decided to. However, I don't feel like iHeartMedia would really be amenable to that. But we'll see. Is it impactful? That's a crazy question. I just talked about for an hour and 9 minutes just how mega impactful this platform is. I feel like a lot of us take for granted what this amazing platform and this group of people have accomplished, number one, and also how much they've affected our lives, whether we know it or not. The conversation in the Black community of mental health, it clearly falls on the shoulders of the Breakfast Club. And let me tell you why. Oprah's been talking about mental health for 20 years. The young community never gave a fuck. Oprah has been talking about mental health for 20 some years. The Breakfast Club has been around for 12 years. Oprah 30 years.